Okay. So now I think what I want to do here is I'm going to have everybody clap. Just do a big clap and on a 3, 2. Not yet. Just to like do on like a 3, 2, 1 countdown to like for my editing's sake. All right, ready? Here, put your hands in the air.
Hands are in the air.
3, 2, 1. The worst clapping I've ever heard. You guys are terrible.
I think you should leave all of this in.
This is going in now. I mean, you
This entire
practically
segment.
applauded.
This is like
You practically just
God-tier
applauded.
entertainment right here. This is what I signed up for.
Everybody's gonna love this. Everybody's gonna be like, "Hey, did you hear that clapping part that they did?
Oh man.
They are.
What a great part!" All right, welcome everybody. Now that we're in this,
Yeah.
to session 0.5, a podcast that serves as your one-stop shop for all things tabletop role-playing game. My name is Theo Bazin, introducing my guests this week, which will be rotating in an episodic fashion.
Wow. Good.
I love
our-
episodic fashions.
Thanks, guys. I thought I was proud of that one.
Yeah.
Are my personal friend and both DM and PC, Ethan.
I'm not very good at either, but I try my best.
Wrong. And
Damn.
my other
Wow,
personal
okay.
friend and don't cut me off. My my
Cut
other
him off. Cut him
friend.
off.
My other friend. I'm trying to introduce you guys. My
No.
other friend
Do not perceive
and
me.
also player Kyle.
Hi.
Kyle's here.
I have a
All
lesser
right.
title than Ethan. This is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know how to DM. I'm really bad at that.
Have you ever tried?
One day
Nope.
you'll figure it out.
No, I won't.
Yeah, you've never tried.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a great segue into our first
Wow.
bit here.
Wow.
A segue. How to
A
start
wild
a game.
segue.
I love segues.
Me too. Just like Paul Blart Mall Cop. Paul Blart Mall Cop. Edit that out. All right.
No, never.
Uh,
Keep that, Theo.
how to start a game and learn the ropes. Every episode, we're gonna have a main advice segment where we answer one we feel to be a burning question that a lot of people getting into the game, or even those who are experts, have.
None of us are probably experienced to be talking about this, but hey, that's what
No.
makes it fun.
That's fine though. All right.
It is
So-
what it is.
Let's start with talking about how to get into a game. So we all here, it's important to acknowledge that we three people are very lucky in terms of getting into games, because we all were already friends before. We're all nerds,
This is true.
and we all had kind of a mutual interest. It started with Ethan actually reached out to me the first time, and doubly lucky, we had Ethan has a neighbor
Yeah.
that was like an experienced DM, like literally lived next door. We had to like a short walk through his side woods
Yes.
to get
So-
to an experienced DM.
Basically, what happened was I had been starting to watch some like D&D live play games on YouTube, and I went up to another one of our friends named Jacob, and I was like, "Hey, you want to play? You ever heard of this game called Dungeons and Dragons?"
It's a great game.
And he was like, "Yo, I think I've been thinking about wanting to start playing that." And I was like, "Hey, we have some other friends. Why don't we go ask them if they want to play?" And then turns out people did, and then here we are.
So that's easiest shit in the world. And then we reached out to Kyle later.
Yeah.
It
It took me a while to like
and-
actually finally be able to play, because I think the first time you guys invited me to a session, that like very week my uncle died.
Yeah.
So I was like I had
Yeah.
to miss our session 0 and had to get everything set up like 5 minutes before our first session.
Yeah, I remember like everybody else was done. We were just setting up your
Yeah.
character like.
Cause
in
like I
s-
would have
in
loved to play,
speed.
and I was like
Oh, yeah.
really mad. I was less mad that my uncle died, and I was more
Wow.
mad.
Okay, but actually
Great
though,
for
like that session 0 did not go well, because that was the same time that I got really sick.
Yeah.
Or not
you
like
got
really sick, but I was not well enough to do anything.
So only like four people were there,
Of the 6.
and
players.
one of them was my brother.
Yeah.
So,
he was
like,
legally required
we
by
had-
God.
we
to
had
be
2
there.
people missing.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
'cause
it's
Will lives
very
in the
it's very
house, so-
beneficial to have like somebody living in your household who's also part of your group,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
you can nag them constantly about getting their
This
shit
is
together.
Yeah. But for those of you who are not as lucky, how do you start a game? How do you actually get people to want to play Dungeons and Dragons or any other tabletop game with you? Well, first and foremost, take it from our example. Don't be afraid to reach out to your friends. If your friends are your true friends, they might also be nerds. If you're listening to this podcast right now, I'm sorry to like red pill you here. It might be time to face it.
You
might
are
be
a nerd.
Yeah, I think you might be a nerd. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. But yeah. So you probably have mutual interests with a lot of the people around you. And that's not a thing to be afraid of. And in fact, take advantage of it. You know, another thing that's important is if you want to start playing and you don't know a whole lot of people around you who have played D&D or other tabletop games before, you might have to run a game. And it's scary, yes. It's scary, yes. Yeah, hyperventilating and gasps aside, it's scary. But, you know, just start to try to learn the rules. Start to try to pick up some resources, some materials, and then get some friends. And everything else will come with it.
And honestly, if you're trying to introduce new people, the best way to go about it is bullying. And by that, by that I mean like, just encourage people to try it. Like I found that one shots are usually a good way to get people into playing D&D because especially it gives me a chance to kind of learn how to DM before I was actually DMing my own campaign, and then also it is just generally like it's a nice way for people to be introduced because they get to try the game without like committing to a long campaign.
Absolutely. And you know, if it's not, if it doesn't end up being for you, if it doesn't end up being for one of your particular friends, that's not the end of the world. You know, you can always just not play. It's a game.
And if it's not D&D, there's other systems, there's other games to play.
But if you're probably here listening to this, you probably want to play. So that part aside.
That's true.
Yeah. And as far as learning the rules, it's a lot at first.
True.
And that is just true. So that, you know, maybe you don't want to start with 5e, which is, although simpler, like quote unquote, than other Dungeons and Dragons systems that came before it, has a lot of rules, and that's just kind of the truth. You can start with another system, or you can just you can try to learn 5e. But don't be afraid if the rules are a bit of a learning curve at first, because your friends and you are in it together, right?
True.
So both of you work together to start to learn the rules and start to form a more cohesive group and game.
Yeah, I think also 5e is actually a pretty decent system to learn on. That was what I learned TTRPGs on, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't have much experience with other TTRPG. I don't have as much experience as I might like with other TTRPGs aside from 5e, but like 5e is not a bad system because I feel like once you kind of know the rules for some aspects of the game, so much of it is more intuitive that like you have a decent idea of the rules as a whole. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, once you
you
know how to use
learn
a D20, the rest of the game kind of falls into place.
Once you learn, general thing with TTRPGs, once you learn one, you can start learning others. That was what happened more in my experience. I have played, right now, you know, I've only played like 3 systems. 5e is the one I play most often, and then I've also played Monster of the Week and Call of Cthulhu 7th edition. Both very good systems, by the way. And you know, once you start learning one, especially running one, where you know when you're on the GMing or DMing side of the perspective, you get a greater sense of the rules because you're the one who has to like be the judge, jury, and executioner as far as following the rules. Systems, you know.
They are a thing that
yeah.
exist. That are
That's his name?
decently.
But yeah. I think the biggest thing we can take away from this, or that you can take away from this, is don't be afraid.
Yeah, just try new
try new
stuff.
things. This is
Like, for example,
we are
we're
trying to make a podcast right now. This is the first podcast that I've ever made. Yeah, don't be afraid to try new things. Good life advice. Good advice in terms of RPGs, Dungeoning Dragons. You know, what started as like weekly trek to my friend's neighbor's house has transitioned to like a a weekly thing. I've run and finished a full 5e campaign.
He did. It
Great,
was fun.
It was
great
a good
time.
campaign.
Yeah, Ethan is running a game. Kyle will maybe
Right.
run a game one day. But Kyle has played lots of D&D.
Highly
Okay,
unlikely. Because I don't know anything about running my own game. But
That's what I'm trying to talk about,
Okay,
Kyle.
here's the way to start. Here's the way that you start DMing a campaign. Here's what's happened with my current one, at least. Basically, I played a video game, and I was like, huh, this is a pretty cool video game. And I played another game, I'm like, huh, what if I fusioned these two together? And that just kept happening with different forms of media until I had something resembling a
Yeah.
coherent story. So basically, what I'm saying is, a relentlessly
Don't be afraid to
steal
yoink.
from...
just snort cocaine and
Yeah,
snort cocaine
relentlessly
and go
steal,
with it.
but you gotta steal from more than one thing,
Mhm.
you know?
Alright.
You've got to be a master thief. You can't just be a simple thief that only steals from one story or form of media. You gotta
When-
be out there.
You gotta
When
like blend
I-
it.
Yeah,
Get out the
when I
blender.
started running my first game, I was super afraid of using anything outside of my own creations. And my first ever full campaign took place in a homebrew world. That might be good for you. That might not be good for you. I don't entirely recommend it because it can be hard to just jump into world building for your first ever game. I have unrealistic expectations for
We all
myself.
do, yeah.
You guys have unrealistic expectations for
Yeah.
me? Fuck.
No. I have higher expectations for you than
So
I
you have
do
perfectly
ever for
realistic
myself.
expectations for yourself,
Um,
Kyle.
Yeah.
You have unrealistically low expectations
no.
for yourself? Of course.
Well.
Of course. I hate myself.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid. Like the monster manual, the dungeon master's guide, the player's handbook, all those exist for a reason. That's
Plus,
for you to
can
use them.
spend $200 or $300 on a ton of other source books like I have done. You know?
Yeah. I'm gonna look over to my right shelf
That's
here.
that's really comedic. That you dare think I have $200
Kyle, I've seen the
lying
I've
around
seen
in
the
my
amount
household.
of video games that you purchase that you are never going to play.
Yeah, and how much debt do you
I
think I
have-
racked up with that?
Kyle
I
is
stole
in
my dad's
approximately
credit card for that.
$1,200 of debt to Valve Corporation.
True. Sorry, Valve, if you're
Yeah.
listening. Yeah, but looking over on my little D&D segment of my shelf right here, I have like 9 5e books.
I have to count.
The Monsters of the Week core rule book, a bunch of dice in a bag. I've got a battle mat and a bunch of minis over there. And this just kind of goes to say, like, it's addicting.
Yes, you never know. You think that just one dice set will be fine until you get one dice set, and then you think maybe 2 would be
Yeah.
better, and then suddenly you have a large box of dice that makes this noise when you take it.
Oh, God.
I was given one set of dice by my friend, and then I proceeded after the quarantine started to buy 5 other sets, because I really like.
They're
dice.
fun to look at, and you will think they're fun to look at, too.
Also, they're satisfying when they go click clack and then give you a good number.
When they go clicky clack.
Throwback to the
Bean dice, pretty
that
poggers,
I saw
honestly.
on
Bean
Twitter.
I've seen dice with little rubber ducks in them.
I want the bean dice.
I've seen light up dice. There's so
One
many
of our
dice.
friends has a bag for his
Bean
dice that's
dice.
just fish.
The
Yeah.
the dice fish.
The dice fish.
We should get him on.
Jared
this
will be on the
one day.
podcast one day, and I'm holding that to
Discuss
myself
his-
and him.
Discuss his entire bag fish. This entire segment of his bag fish.
Yeah. Another good place, just transitioning a little bit,
Transition time.
getting a little bit off topic. Another place to learn the ropes and get into some of your first games are online
Yeah,
communities.
sorry.
No, go
I
ahead.
personally have taken a lot of inspiration and ideas from the subreddit r/DM Academy. I think it has a lot of good stuff. Like there was one post on there that I saw this past week that I'm thinking about incorporating into my games from u/22 glowworm 22. That was all about.
Thanks, Glowworm22,
Yeah.
if you're out there.
It's about rewarding your characters with so-called character boons that are basically like class features that you can. This is 5e, by the way. That are about like rewarding your characters with so-called character boons, which basically are sort of like class features or like subclass features that are specifically tailored to the specific character. Which I just think is kind of neat. Like you get like
It's
random
pretty
little
cool.
pieces of homebrew advice like that, and you also can get like I've asked questions on DM Academy. I haven't answered questions, but I would be willing to answer questions on DM Academy. Just just stuff like that. I think it's a good resource.
Yeah. So you have DM Academy. You have Roll 20. Roll 20 is a place where it's like a compendium, uh, a virtual tabletop, and a community where you can actually find and play games. So I'm bad at Roll 20. I've yet to actually learn how the virtual tabletop works. Um, but there's also like similar to D&D Beyond, although D&D Beyond you have to pay for a lot of stuff now.
Unfortunately.
You can look stuff up and find it. Yeah, unfortunately, you can find it super easily, like a monster stat block, a specific ability, a class or a subclass. You can look it up on Roll20, and Roll20 actually goes beyond D&D too, where you can actually like go ahead and purchase other games on there, like Call of Cthulhu, and all those other fun tabletop systems. And I know that, and we'll talk about some of this later, some RPG horror stories do absolutely stem from unknown online communities and games with strangers and all that stuff. But that's not to say that you won't find a good game on one of these sites. So you shouldn't be afraid to put yourself out there.
True.
Yeah. All right. What else? What else? What else? What else? Ooh, I wanted to talk about whatever this was. So this is another small tip that I saw on Reddit earlier that I wanted to talk about. This is from Gnomish Ranger on Reddit, using r/D&D text, another good subreddit. That's once again Reddit, great, has a lot of different subreddits. Ethan mentioned DM Academy, D&D text,
Isn't it D&D
all
Next?
sorts of things. It is D&D Next. Why am I saying D&D text?
I don't know. Sorry.
Important
It's
I didn't
D&D
interrupt
Next.
you, Mr. Jeff.
I might have been just reading it as D&D text this entire time.
That's exciting.
Love that.
That's great. I love when that happens, especially when you're trying to record a podcast and that mistake slips out immediately.
That's fine. It adds character.
Character is the word for it. This is just a title of small tip that may be helpful to some people, and it says, remember to periodically remake your character from scratch to make sure that you have all the features you should have, especially if you're doing actual pen and paper character sheets. I decided to remake the ranger I'm currently playing, and I realized I messed up leveling him up somewhere along the way. There were a few spell slots I was missing, and my health was lower than what it should be. So I think the first part that's important here is I think you should start any TTRPG pen and paper.
True. I would agree with that.
There are, like, I've used plenty of different virtual character sheet creators, D&D Beyond, Orc Pub, Dole House. They are cool, but if you use them all the time, you won't actually know how to make a character without some random website doing it for you. And this is not to sound like I want to go back to Monkey. This is like, hey,
Reject.
what if
I
you're...
mean, I
Technology.
can confirm because my first character was on a character sheet, and then COVID happened, and we all were forced into quarantine. I had to rely on like D&D Beyond to help me make my character sheet. And then the second time I ever had to make a character sheet like in person for your second campaign, Theo,
Mhm.
I had no idea what I was doing because
Yeah.
I didn't really.
And then this is... Yeah, and this is why this person is saying remake your characters every now and again. I know I have looked at my brother's terrible beaten up character sheets downstairs in the basement and been like, he needs to make a new version of this. Like, even just for like neatness and quality, as opposed, and also just like brushing yourself up on all your abilities and stuff, it'll help you remember, like, oh yeah, I can do this cool thing in game that can really beat some stuff up.
I
you know?
kept using
Um,
what was it? Eldritch Blast, because I couldn't remember what half of my spells did.
I mean,
Kyle's
that's
first-
basically just playing a warlock, though.
Yeah.
To
Kyle's
be
first
honest,
character was a very one trick pony. Let's say.
Hey, all
in the
my other
Eldritch
ones
Blast
ended up
part.
if the one trick works, you gotta do what you gotta do, right?
Yeah, I'm playing a Gloomstalker in Ethan's campaign, and I'm using the new fighting style from Tasha's thrown weapon fighting. So I made the whole character based off of knife throwing, and all I do is throw knives, and it works. So I'm just gonna keep throwing knives.
Hell yeah.
But that's not to say you shouldn't still remember all your other cool abilities.
That's until I make an enemy that's immune to knives specifically.
Immune to magical infinity knives. My character has a bandolier of knives that never runs out. I remember my first character that I ever made. I used to, and this is I think especially important when you're first learning the rules. I used to go back every now and again and just make sure I had like the right amount of hit points, the right amount of proficiencies. I was playing a bard and jack of all trades and expertise. When that stuff stacks, you really want to make sure that all your bonuses are in check. It's just good, especially when you're learning the rules, to make sure everything's all set and good.
True.
True indeed. With that, I think it's time for news. What do you guys think?
I like news.
News is good, unless
News?
it's bad news, and that's not good.
I
That's
mean,
not very good news.
good news. Coronavirus. That's not
not
good
good
news.
news.
That's bad news.
Forgetting about coronavirus, let's talk about some TTRPG news. The first thing I found that I thought was interesting is that Call of Cthulhu is the #2 tabletop role-playing game on Roll20. As I said before, you can play a bunch of different tabletop games on Roll20, and just under 5e and uncategorized, quote-unquote, is Call of Cthulhu, which I thought was pretty cool, I guess.
I'm not gonna lie, when you posted that in the document, it literally took me up until right now to realize that you didn't mean that it was the second one to be added to Roll20, that it was like just the second most popular.
Call of Cthulhu just got added,
I
boys.
fully I fully thought that was just the second. It was just the second one.
There's
there was
only
only
two
one before.
there.
And now there's two.
It's D&D 5e and Call of Cthulhu. No, there's actually you can get a whole bunch of stuff on Roll20. I'm not advertising, but if I were to advertise, Roll20, hit me up. You can play like Fate. You can play Call of Cthulhu, obviously. You can play all the Powered by the Apocalypse games on there. Pretty cool. And it's cool to see that Call of Cthulhu, which I say is arguably one of the more popular systems.
I mean, behind 5e, I think.
Yeah, because I remember, Ethan, when we first started playing, Call of Cthulhu was like the second game you mentioned.
Yeah.
So, proof. Yeah. Moving on. I found a new 5e adventure from the belloflostsouls.net called The Paladin and the Fiend, which was basically, classic plot hook. The party gets like a cursed locket with a fiend bound to it, which you can use this as like a one-shot idea or like a plot hook for your current campaign. I'm not going to lie, I mostly picked this piece of news because there was an ad for a dice with ooh ooh written on it. I thought that was funny, so I was like, I'm going to put this in just so I can talk about that.
That's
I
exciting.
don't need to
That's
know where
good.
that uwu dice is.
I'm
For
actually going to click on the website
scientific
real quick and see if the ad is still there.
Ooh.
It is not still there. It is now it is American Express.
We're gonna
Rough.
go to Google. I want to see if I can find this uwu dice.
I'm sure if you Google ooh ooh dice, you'll find something.
Hopefully. That's pretty important.
But yeah,
Some D20.
I didn't click on the ad, but so I'm wondering if like it was a nat 20 you get an ooh ooh, or if it was a nat 1 you get a ooh ooh.
Nat 1 is ooh, nat 20 is oo.
True.
Yeah, so I had also been going to talk about, because this podcast didn't exist when this was first announced, back in January, about a month ago, but the new D&D 5e book, the whatchamacallit, Candlekeep Mysteries, I thought was kind of interesting, because unlike unlike a lot of like the more traditional adventures, which are like longer form, like you play like they run from like level 1 to whatever. This one is just 17 one-shots, which I think is pretty exciting. It includes
Heck yeah.
it's 19 different designers, which I thought is pretty sick because from what I remember reading, a lot of these different designers were all like a bunch of like independent people who got to work with Wizards of the Coast on this. And yeah, 17 different one-shot adventures that take place from levels 1 to 16, that are all based around this one central theme of like books. So basically, everyone begins in the Candlekeep Library, I believe is what it's called.
Nice.
And you find a book, it sends you on an adventure, and you go off on that adventure.
That's super cool.
Yeah. And so that
Yeah, I
releases
didn't know
on
that.
March 16th. So I'm going to be by that. I don't know if anyone else is, but I am.
Yeah, I didn't know about that until Ethan had mentioned it yesterday. I tend not to like to run modules all that much, but that's not to say that I won't run one. And this book might be a good try. I think my first game that I ever ran was a module. Then I just stopped running modules.
Yeah. Especially,
that
I
one
think
up.
could be good for like someone who wants to get into DMing because of the fact that it's
Yeah,
all
absolutely.
one-shots. So it's just a way to kind of experiment,
Yeah.
try something new. I also noticed that this was pretty interesting because it was the first like official adventure that is wheelchair accessible, which is kind of sick.
Ooh, that's cool.
Because there's been this whole push for more like accessibility for people with disabilities over the past couple of months. Like I know there was the whole thing with like the combat wheelchair supplement, and then Matt Mercer incorporating it into Critical Role, and like some of like the figure websites like incorporating wheelchairs. I just thought it was kind of cool.
That is cool.
That was very cool.
All right. I think now that the news has ended, unless there's any other news that I didn't list on this document here that we want to talk about,
That was what I had.
I don't have.
I
any
think we're
news.
good. Kyle doesn't have any news. We're going to take a quick
Well,
break.
I mean, in some news, I did find some Uwu dice.
That's pretty
news.
important news. That's important news.
Ooh, dice. All right. We're going to take a quick break.
Kyle's gonna go order some Uwu dice.
Kyle's going to go order some Uwu
It's
dice.
like $80. I can't afford a Uwu dice.
We'll be right back. All right, we're back. Kyle has ravioli.
I
Everything is
took
good.
a singular sip of water.
I took multiple actually, because I'm a rascal like
Good
that.
for you, Theo.
You guys should hydrate more.
It's good for me indeed. Every now and then, we have our one topic on this podcast, and sometimes you want to switch to other things. Fantasy is important, but sometimes we gotta learn,
Yeah.
right? Education.
I like
Important.
education. Kyle,
That's
do you like
why-
education?
Depends on what the education is.
Well, you're gonna love this education. We are introducing,
We are introduced.
for the first time, and probably gonna be carried out into every episode from this point on until we run out of them.
Purely because it was an
Unremarkable.
unremarkable Twitter joke.
It was a Twitter joke when I announced that this podcast was going to be made. The unremarkable presidential fact of the episode.
Woo.
Yes. This week's fact is about Grover Cleveland.
Who likes Grover Cleveland? I don't.
I
It's
hate that
nobody.
man.
True. Grover Cleveland, did you know that his first name was Stephen?
I did not know that. That's exciting, Theo.
His first name was Stephen. He changed it in middle school, I think.
I don't know. What did we say?
Or something. Or was that Ted Cruz?
I
Ted
think that
Cruz
was
might
Ted.
change
I'm
his
pretty sure
name.
that was Ted
Ted
Cruz. What was
Ted Cruz changed his name in middle school.
What was his
Grover,
What was Ted? Whoa, okay, wait. We'll get to Grover Cleveland's name. What was Ted Cruz's original name?
Hold on, let me Google this because we talked about this the other. This is now a good conversation to have. Ted Cruz's name was Rafael Edward Cruz.
Okay.
Rafael Cruz is such an arguably better name than Ted Cruz.
This is true. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of spitting facts.
Yeah. But yeah, so Grover Cleveland's original name was Stephen. He used his middle name, Grover, as an adult. But never forget that we could have had a president named Stephen Cleveland.
I think
I
that would
would've
have
And
been better.
that's...
He
that
would have
would've
been so much more
fantastic.
memorable. Who likes Grover? All my homies love Steve.
Steve Cleve.
True.
They called him in college, I'm sure.
I would.
Oh yes, the noteworthy college fraternities of the 1860s.
Well, yeah. What did they do? What else would they do in the 80s?
The frat boys be like, "Oi, bro!" Wait, the frat boys be like, "Ah, yes, good sirs, we are going to attend the local baseball game today."
No. If this is the 1800s, it would have been like Yeehaw. Because Wild West.
True.
I'm just saying.
True. All right, that's our unremarkable presidential fact. It was unremarkable. Time to talk about tabletop games again. We're gonna move into. Well, first of all, we're gonna skip a segment that we would do, if we actually get some questions. Hey, you out there, listen to this right now. I know you're paying attention. You
No,
better
they're
be,
not.
or I'm gonna be mad at you.
Are
You're
we
gonna
paying
feel
attention?
sad when
Is
you-
anyone paying attention,
you're
Theo?
You're gonna feel sad when you go to bed.
Is anyone
and you're
paying
gonna
attention
I
to
didn't-
life?
I didn't
No.
pay attention to the Nice Man's podcast when I was listening to it.
I haven't been
So
paying
start
attention to
paying
life
attention.
since the 5th grade.
You can email us and tweet us with your questions. You can email us at session05pod@gmail.com.
Said an O or a
Or
zero?
actually, I will tell you in just a second. It's actually session. So that's the Twitter. The Twitter is session05pod. At session05pod on Twitter. That's SESSION number 05POD on Twitter. And then you can email us if you'd like a little more anonymity. Session0.5pod@gmail.com. That's SESSION 0.5pod@gmail.com. But we're skipping that segment because nobody sent us any questions or anything.
Yeah,
So
this is.
we're gonna move on to stories.
Woo!
Yay!
Story
I love
time.
story time.
RPGs can give you a lot of funny stories,
They can.
sad stories,
This is
other
true.
types of stories that aren't funny or sad.
just
gonna talk-
just completely average stories.
Regular stories that you hear from an office building and they're really
like-
boring.
Hey,
Um,
did you hear about that? Hear about that orc we fought last week?
yeah, I
Yeah.
cut him with my sword in a very boring way. Just an extremely regular sword slice.
Of course.
But we're going to talk about some of our personal stories. Once again, you can give us your stories at our email and our Twitter.
Hint.
I'm gonna go. Wait, I'm gonna go email the
hint.
official Twitter account just so that way. I'm gonna go tweet at.
Email? You're going to email the Twitter?
Yes.
I'm gonna email
Go email the
Jack.
Twitter.
I'm gonna email Jack, and we're gonna tell him to email.
I'm gonna
Uh,
email. Theo, I'm
Jack
gonna email
from
you.
Twitter, email us. Okay, email the. Yeah. I'm going to see if I get the email. This is exciting.
Wait, oh wait, I have to go actually do the email. It was for the
Oh,
bit, I'm gonna go. Wait. Hey Theo, you wanna repeat that email account again?
Okay, email is session0.5pod@gmail.com.
All
Oh,
right.
you mean I can email you at session 0.5 at gmail.com?
That's right. You and everybody listening right now can email me and all of our guests who will appear on the podcast, session0.5pod@gmail.com. Isn't that fantastic and isn't that wonderful?
I didn't spell Gmail correctly.
That's sad. That's sad.
It is very
All right.
sad.
All right. I sent you an important email, Theo. This is a good
All right,
story.
I gotta read this email. I have gotten no email, so I'll see if I get it.
I just sent it to
I'm
you.
just gonna keep refreshing it. Hopefully it comes.
I just threw my phone. 1 sec.
Ah, there it is. Oh, look at this great story from. Oh, who's this lovely fellow? Overfallen.
Ah, yeah.
I'm sure he's a great guy. Story. I casted a spell at a dragon and it was cool and we won. Yay.
Well, this guy had a really good story. I'm really glad that he was
I-
so detailed and intense
I'm
and fun.
so glad that he shared our
So
story,
great.
his story with us, so we could talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah.
But that actually does transition to a real life story that we can talk about. Ethan, if you'd like to take that away.
I mean, it
I
was
think
your
this is a
game.
funny
I was just living in it, you know?
All right, here's what we'll do. I'm going to introduce the game.
Yes.
This was a one-shot that I ran for fun not too long ago. I think it was like...
It was early
I
quarantine.
feel like I think it was sometime in the
Yeah.
summer.
I thought it was like spring
I
or
think it was
something.
in the summer.
Yeah, it
Spring or
was
summer.
summer.
I decided that I was going to be really terrible to myself, and I was going to run a level 20 one-shot.
None of us had ever
Level
played
20.
up to past like level like. We'd
Six.
played one shot at 14, and then we'd never played anything past like 5 at the time.
Yeah. So level 20 one-shot. Level 20, if you aren't aware, is the highest level you can reach in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. And I decided for flavor that our level 20 characters would be based off of the Greek gods. Not just based off of my dog is barking. Shut up.
Hi, dog.
He's the
Who's at your
special
house
guest.
now?
Trying to do a podcast. Special guest, my dog, everybody. His name is Wesley. He's great, except for when he barks really loud and interrupts my podcast. So we decided that we were going to play as Greek gods. That was going to be our... He's still barking. It's so...
Is there like
Alright.
a mailman at your house?
There must be like an Amazon truck or something. But anyway, we decided we were going to play as the Greek gods. I think we had like Poseidon. We had Dionysus. That was Kyle's character.
Yep.
Ethan was playing as Athena.
It was.
All sorts of great characters. And I think this is where I got to turn it over to Ethan,
Yeah, so
as he's the star of the story.
so we were doing some fancy special, you know, like everyone was getting their own magic items because we were gods. And mine as Athena was based off of an old story where she, I believe, like lost some art competition and like turned someone into something. I don't remember. It's been a couple months. But it was based off of that. So I had a sword where you could cast True Polymorph, right? And then because we were fighting off some people in DC, something about the main villain.
Yeah.
I think it was the villain was Hades. And he was
Hades,
to kill.
Hades was trying to take over the world, and he decided to start with Washington, D.C. to like kill the president of the United States, start with the United States, and spread out to the rest of the world. So we were in D.C.,
We were.
and
We were fighting off some zombies on the National Mall. By some, I mean like several 100,000.
hordes and hordes of zombies that were summoned by Satan from the underworld.
And I got a really good idea, and by really good, I mean I thought it would make me look cool, even if it didn't really help us in any meaningful way. So I used my True Polymorph sword, and I turned the Washington Monument into a blue dragon, because that's how True Polymorph works.
True Polymorph allows you to change an object into something like forever, I think.
Yes, it's an hour at first, and then if it hasn't died, it stays that permanently, but it's no longer bound to you.
Yes. So Ethan turned the Washington Monument permanently into a blue dragon.
So yeah, in that canon, there is no Washington Monument.
And it is now a dragon.
His name was
And
George.
His name was George, based off of George Washington, and he was there throughout the entire rest of that session.
Yes.
It was a good session.
Uh,
That was also the same
Good
session
times,
that
good
I banished Hades, and Theo forgot that legendary resistances existed.
I always forget that legendary resistances exist whenever I'm doing high-level games.
Yes.
Every time, without fail.
Mhm.
So that's one story about how the Washington Monument no longer exists. If you go to Washington, D.C. right now in real life,
It's
you will
just a
look
dragon.
to see a Washington Monument, and you will in fact see a giant dragon. That is true fact.
I went
Yeah.
to DC. I can tell you right now.
Also,
That
if you
is
just stand there, or he's just standing there. He's not doing anything. He's just kind of standing there.
Yeah.
You can pet him, though, and he might give you a ride.
This is true. This is true. I went, and it was true.
Yep. We all went to DC. We can tell you firsthand.
can.
There's a dragon there.
All right. We have a couple other stories. I think next I'll tell an embarrassing story where actually Ethan was the DM for this
Hell yeah.
one. So Ethan, if you want to introduce kind of the premise of the campaign we were playing at the time.
All right. So basically, it was my first campaign it was like a Eberron campaign that we're no longer running, because I got bored and distracted with it. But sometimes it's like that. And I was introduced in like this whole cult. So this whole cult. I was gonna say subplot, but it wasn't a subplot because it was the main plot. And there was also this new guy in town who just was being nice to them at first. He was a new NPC that totally was not suspicious in the slightest. He was being nice. He was just being a good man. And then Theo, I don't know.
Yeah, when Ethan says not suspicious, I fully believed.
You did.
Why?
I fully thought he was being suspicious.
I fully believed his lies and deceit, and my character was a wizard, and one of he was a warforged wizard, and one of the big character traits that he was very curious and very helpful.
And he was also the chronology subclass, which does come into
He was
play.
a chronologist. So from the Critical Role source book, which I believe is called
Explorer's Guide to Wild.
Explorer's Guide. Yes. So this is basically he was a time wizard who could like reverse time. There was also some other spells that came with that source book, including one called Wrist Pocket, which allows you to hold like a small object in your hand and like whisk it away into a small pocket dimension.
Yes.
So we were talking to this NPC, and he had mentioned, I think, and this was like all that you had to do to get me to to cave, was like you mentioned that he was like a learning magic, or was like interested in learning magic.
I think he knew a couple of cantrips, but he
Yeah.
obviously knew more, but he didn't show you guys more.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, let me teach you this spell. I'm dumb. And I taught him Wrist Pocket by like whisking away a teacup or something, and literally had him practice it a couple of times because I'm stupid. And later that really bit us in the butt when we had to get some kind of like important artifact to start like a ritual, I think it was.
Yes, that he was going to use to begin a ritual. Yeah.
To like destroy the world.
He
and-
used you. It wasn't to destroy the world. It was just to summon a herald of the apocalypse that would destroy the world.
Who would destroy the world? Yeah. I don't even know my lore.
I don't remember I don't remember anything about that game, by the way.
But yeah, I whisked. We were trying to get the thing from him naturally, but he just grabbed it and wrist pocketed it, and I was like, oh shit. Because I realized, oh, I taught him that spell.
You did.
Yay me.
Look, it added flavor to the moment, you know?
It did add flavor to the moment. And this is the kind of thing, this also is a learning moment. Don't be afraid of failure in 5e, because even though that was a atrocious failure on my part,
And, sorry,
obviously,
continue. I had something to add.
Um, it was, it was still a cool moment, and it allowed for a little more plot development.
And
Don't be afraid of
also,
failure.
yeah, don't be afraid to contribute to plot development through intentional failure. Like, don't make the game don't make the game less fun for the other people. Like, do what you can to make, like, 'cause obviously it's a cooperative game. Your goal is to have fun and maximize the fun of everyone else. But don't be afraid of, making like adding some humor by like doing something that your character would do, even if you necessarily wouldn't do it. Like, if like you notice that someone's being suspicious, but your character is stupid and wouldn't, play it like that, because it makes it more fun for everyone if you kind of get into your character.
Yeah, one of these days we'll have a main advice segment for metagaming, and we'll talk all about metagaming.
Metagaming.
Because that's another big thing.
Hate it. All my homies hate metagaming, except when
Hate metagaming.
except when it's allowed.
Except when it's good metagaming.
Bas-
We're going to talk about it at
Yeah.
some point. We'll talk about it. If you're a D&D player or a TTRPG player, you probably know. Okay. I think we'll talk about one more story. You had one that starred me being an idiot. You had one that starred Ethan being cool. Now we'll talk about one that starred Kyle being cool.
I love it when I'm
Wowzers.
cool.
We love it when Kyle's cool.
We all love Kyle's cool.
This one is going to take a bit of explanation because I run games that require a lot of context.
This is true.
True.
Trying to explain
So-
anything about the Isles campaign requires a lot of context.
My first campaign, my magnum opus was called Islands of Hosvog, my first ever homebrew world. It was an archipelago continent that was war-torn from a war over innovation in technology. Factions were created. Those factions became different nations that were all on different islands, so that the whole basic theme of the campaign that I was building here was that each island had its own level of technology that it had advanced to. So there was like one that was in the middle, one that was monkey, and one that was like kind of like steampunkish. And then one that was like called the Mystery Island that was like dinosaurs.
Wait, I thought
and
that
stuff.
one was supposed to be the monkey. Which one was monkey?
Yeah, I guess that one's technically monkey. Other one was more like high medieval.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
Then you had like low medieval, low fantasy, and then super low fantasy, basically more tech. And that led to a lot of random stuff happening, including one time where the main bad guy, who was actually not the main bad guy, and this is where I'm going to get into a whole bunch of random contextual stuff. That bad guy, who wasn't the actual bad guy but was like hypnotized by the real bad guy, sent all the player characters to robot hell. And this, we were talking about thoughtful yoinking earlier for all of your D&D games, entirely yoinked from Futurama. I took robot hell as a dimension for the players to be sent
No,
to.
there were already
against their
robots
will.
in the campaign. It's not like this was our first
There
experience
were already
with
robots.
robots.
There were already robots. Constructs were created in like the steampunk technology kind of place. So they got sent to robot hell. And that led to them having to try to escape robot hell, which of course led to a meeting with robot Satan. And I will let Kyle take it from here.
It's been a while since this session of the campaign happened. I think this happened like sometime in like early spring-ish. So my details are a little fuzzy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it was
as
early
we
COVID.
We were meeting with
It
the
was one of the first sessions we read after COVID.
yeah. So right as we're trying to like get out of robot hell, meeting with robot Satan, and he challenges me. He challenges the entire group to try and beat him in a contest. So I step up, kick his ass in a fiddling contest. And
This is also
Wow.
entirely
Cool song
Futurama.
so we get out of hell because I beat Robot Satan in a fiddling contest, essentially.
Of course.
Yeah, it was like a group of performance checks. This is a rule that I use a lot in my games, where I decide to use death saving throw rules, but to have them be contested for just different checks. So like in this case, I think it was Kyle versus Robot Satan, and they had to each reach like 3 successes before the other one in order to win. And the deal was, you beat me, you get out of robot hell. And Kyle
I got
beat
think I
Robot
got like
Satan
2
in a
nat
fiddling
20s.
Wait, so
in
what
that.
would have happened if we lost, by the way?
You would have fought Robot Satan.
Was that a winnable fight?
Oh yeah. Yeah, he was based on his stat block was something that you guys, I believe, had already fought up to that point, actually.
Oh, nice.
Either you had already fought it or were going to fight it very soon, and eventually did. It was I think it was the Warforged, not Colossus, but the Warforged like Titan, I think it's called. Was what his stat block was based on.
Nice.
As well as like he had like a couple of little robot demon guys with him too that you would have had to fight.
Yeah. I rolled like
But yeah.
2 nat 20s during that contest, so
Yeah.
that was
Yeah, it was
that
pretty
whole
wild.
campaign
Yeah.
was wilding.
Yeah, the last session of that campaign, I had the greatest luck I've ever had in Dungeons and Dragons, where I rolled, what was it, like a 20, 20, 20, 19, 18 or something
Yeah,
in a
you
row.
had
Yeah, it was
crazy
insane.
rolls.
Yeah, the
And I was
final
playing
boss fight was pretty
Munkadin,
wild.
so that was like
Yeah.
200 damage because I was smiting on those crits.
Yeah, and they were
Turn.
level 10. You guys were level 10, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, basically the end is another wild story. The end of this game. They spent the whole like 18 sessions before the last one making a bunch of friends.
Yes.
and they decided to pay off those friendship points by having them all come as giant armies for an endgame style giant war.
It was a good time.
It was.
Yeah.
Great time. By the way, to ruin all DMs' lives out there, I'm now pumping into the heads of new players that it's totally viable to make a bunch of friends and create giant armies to ruin your fights.
Yes.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah,
Have
it was
fun.
still a good battle. We had a good time.
It was still a good battle. Still some hard enemies. I'm sure we'll talk about encounter balancing in an episode at some point.
Epidode.
That was definitely something. Epidode. That was definitely something that I had to learn.
I had to learn how to make the action
Encounter
economy work.
balancing.
The action economy is shambles.
It is hard.
Just legendary actions. Give everything legendary actions.
that has been Ethan's new.
Hell, hey, look. If it works, it works.
Yeah. Whenever Ethan's new thing. Actually, Ethan, why don't you explain this? Because this actually
Okay,
people might be able to use this.
So action economy, sometimes you don't want to have just one enemy like taking one action, especially when you have a bigger group, because we play with 6, and because you don't want the action economy to be in shambles. Because if the action economy is in shambles and your guy only gets to take 1 turn while everyone else gets to take 6, you can't do much, because your guy essentially has to be absurdly overpowered just in order to be able to not roll over.
Took me a long time to learn that.
So what I've been doing, because obviously there's some fights where you can't just give them minions, but what I've been doing is running, just giving, homebrew, just giving, even, normal enemies that they're fighting on their own, just, a couple of legendary actions here or there. Not many, but just enough to kind of keep it interesting, so that way it's possible to do, single enemy fights without just the enemy instantly dying.
Yeah. In Ethan's homebrew campaign, we just fought what was that stat block, by the way? I never asked that. We fought a ghost guy.
It was a very strange mishmash of a revenant, but I gave him ranged attacks and took away a couple of the revenant things, and then I gave him legendary actions. I moved the, revenant glare from being a normal action to being a legendary action, and then I just changed his claw attacks to, or his melee attacks to the spears, and then the grab part of the melee attacks was the chain spears.
Yeah. Yeah, my character got wrapped in chains for half that fight.
Theo's character did not get to play the game because he got
one
very
turn.
unlucky.
The one turn I got did kill the enemy.
Yes, true.
But before that, I was in chains the entire time. Yeah. All right. That's all of our stories, I think.
I think so.
So with that,
We've been talking for almost an hour.
Yeah, it's been almost an hour. Good talk, guys.
Good
I think it's
chattings.
about time to wrap this episode up.
Well, this has been fun.
Good times were had by all, in the words of Seymour Skinner from The Simpsons.
True.
I've never watched The Simpsons.
And
so
I hope you guys had a good time.
I hope, hey, everybody at home, I hope you guys had a great time.
Exactly.
This is for you guys. Imagine that I'm giving you a hug. I can't really give you a hug.
I would love to
because
get
I'm
hugged by
disembodied
I would
I'm a
love to get hugged by Theo.
disembodied
I always love
voice.
Theo.
on the other side of
I
of
thought
your
we
phone
would go
or
an
computer.
entire thing without simping for Theo, but we couldn't
Oh my
resist.
It's
Only
not
simp for Theo.
possible. I'm too hot. And on that note, we're going to end because I'm on top. Thanks, everybody, so much for listening. It's been a great first episode of the Session 0.5 podcast. Tune in next time we make one of these. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter, blah, 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 blah.
Do
Thanks, everybody,
things.
for listening. We wish you luck in all of your TTRPG pursuits. Have a good night.
Bye.